Welcome to the show. My name is Anton. I'm the CEO of Inovo Real Estate, and today I'm joined by Charles Loreda, a leading US attorney, entrepreneur, and most recently a property investor in Dubai. Charles, great to have you here.
Thank you, Anton. Yeah, good to be here. Yeah, pleasure.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, yeah, I guess as you mentioned, I guess I wear many hats. I'm an immigration attorney during my day job. We have a practice in the Miami area, and we've historically focused on working with entrepreneurs, high net worth individuals, highly skilled professionals immigrate to the U.S. And we work with people from Russia, Europe, South Asia, et cetera. And so that's been our primary business for the last 15, 20 years. But I have to admit, and I think we'll get into this a little bit later today, we're increasingly working with people going the other direction. So working with Americans looking to, get residency or second passport in other markets. And so that's something we might talk about later, but that's something we're increasingly working with. But as you mentioned also, I'm on the personal front, also a real estate investor here in Dubai. Have a couple properties here already, and this is actually my first visit to Dubai, so it's been an eye-opening experience so far.
What made you to look at Dubai from the investment perspective and the business perspective?
Well, as I mentioned, like with our immigration work, a lot of our clients are Russian speakers. So from Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, as I'm sure you know, that demographic has been very active in Dubai for quite some time. And maybe that's changing, but last 5-10 years, you had a lot of Russians, Kazakhs coming to Dubai and the Emirates in general for investments. And just my work with them raised a level of awareness. I don't think Dubai and the Emirates are on the radar of most Americans, or they haven't been recently. I think that's changing. But again, based on my work, I had a lot of clients active in this market talking about investments they were making. And so that piqued my interest. And, if we made the plunge, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years ago, we made an initial investment here in Dubai.
Okay. And what's the general sentiment in the US right now? Are people generally anxious, or is it just the media noise of everything that's going on with the trade war and Trump and
Yeah.
the rest?
Well, I'm sure everybody's got a different opinion. From my perspective as an immigration attorney, it's not just type. There's different names you see in social media for these people, the Plan Bers, so people that are looking at a Plan B, the American, or what do they say, the Armageddon Americans, people that think kind of the U.S. economy, the political system, or the society is just falling apart. I can't argue with that a whole lot. I mean, it does feel like America is a little bit getting stretched at the seams. But to answer your question, I think there is definitely a trend of Americans now considering residency overseas, or at least a Plan B. And that might just entail diversifying their financial portfolio and looking at other markets, because they don't want to keep all their funds in U.S. equities or in the U.S. market or the U.S. real estate market, because it is subject to a lot of these this volatility that we've certainly experienced the last 3 months since Trump has come into power. There's maybe some media hype to it, but just look at it. I mean, Americans traditionally have invested their money in the U.S., 401k, those are the retirement funds in the U.S., and in real estate in the U.S. And the idea or the general principle that it was just, you put money in your 401k, you put money in U.S. real estate. Yeah, there's some ups and downs, but overall, you're generally going to, make money and retire well off. And I think that bedrock principle has kind of been shaken a little bit. I think people in the last 100 days with Trump have realized, or at least come to the conclusion, that it's not going to be how it always was. Now, things might change. Trump and his team, they might come back. They might realize, okay, there's too much that they've been trying to do, and it's shaking the markets too much, and that's creating too many problems. I'm not so sure they're going to pull back. It seems like Trump is kind of intent.
I think so. I think if you look at him, what he's done for the past sort of 4 years and how he won the presidency and everything that he's been through, he's not like a person that would pull back for any point and reason. And to a certain extent, I understand what he's trying to do, but I think it's an extremely difficult job. For the past 40 years, all the manufacturing has been moving over to Asia. And I think that is one of the reasons why the middle class is getting poorer in the Western world, when you're taking that manufacturing power and put it there. And obviously that's why China and Asia is becoming stronger and stronger. But he's trying to change something that's been going on for 40 years.
I don't think you can change it in 4 years.
That's extremely difficult. And that's gonna, whoever does it, whether it's Trump or someone else, is gonna bring a lot of pain to people. Whether that's right or wrong, that's a argument for another day.
Right.
But I can imagine why people are afraid of it and why they would look at other places to invest.
Well, I think if they were making this transition in a more, I don't want to say orderly fashion, but maybe if Trump is not the person who's going to kind of slowly, gradually make changes, right? He's a bit impetuous. He's a bit impatient. And I think also he and his team are a little bit naive in thinking they can get the markets to bend to their will. And that's not going to happen. So, they've pulled back a little bit. They imposed, the tariffs, and then they revoked the tariffs, and now they're negotiating, and we'll see. But I think, fortunately, some of his advisors, invade on him enough to, they looked at the bond market, the U.S. dollar, and the equities markets, and they said, look, we've got to maybe regroup, maybe come up with a more gradual strategy or something. But I think the damage has been done, to be honest. I mean, I think Americans are realizing it's not going to stay the way it was before. I'm not saying this is a doomsday scenario and everything's going to go down the tubes, but I think more Americans, they want to protect themselves in the event that, like you said, Trump's going to maybe try to do in 4 years what's happened over the last 40 years or reverse that. That's probably not going to happen, and there's going to be some turbulence over the next couple of years. And I think as a result, you're seeing more and more Americans that just want to diversify their risk or, limit their risk exposure to that. And that could take the shape of, again, second residency or even a second passport overseas, or something we'll discuss maybe later is, diversifying their assets. I mean, the funny thing is the U.S. market historically, and I'm not a financial advisor, but I think it's been so robust and varied and strong that I think people within the U.S., they could have a variety of, financial instruments and approaches that they would take, whether it's private equity or just public equities that you're investing in, venture capital. But I think people are realizing, okay, there's more outside the U.S. and we probably should be, diversifying a little bit more than we've done in the past. I don't know if that's been your experience.
Oh yeah, hugely. I think we touched bases on that earlier, and for the past year, we've had a tremendous interest from people from the US. And are you getting more questions from clients about Dubai and the UAE, or what's the sort of narrative?
Well, I think Dubai, what's the play there for Americans? I don't think the golden visa, and we could talk about the golden visa requirements here in Dubai in a moment. I don't think many Americans are interested in the Emirates golden visa program, although there could be some people that would be of appeal to. I think for Americans, the biggest appeal is probably on the financial side, right? The financial diversification,
Of course.
making investments here. And here's something of interest too, and we can discuss it in more detail, is people might not realize the dirham, right? The Emirati currency is tied to the US dollar. So as we're seeing the dollar fall vis-a-vis the euro and the pound over the last couple of months, and so anybody looking at making investments in the UK or the EU, your dollar is, worth maybe 10% less than what it was as recently as 60 days ago. Whereas in the Emirates, the dollar is tied to the local currency, and so you're not subject to that dollar depreciation that you would be.
While still diversifying your portfolio.
Exactly. Yeah, you're diversifying, but you're not. You don't have that currency risk that you do. And I think in the near term, I think given Trump's policies, his goal of trying to drive down the dollar a little bit to stimulate manufacturing in the U.S. and exports from the U.S., I don't think the dollar is going to recover in the near term, and it's probably just going to keep going down. So, any investments that you're looking to make, say in the eurozone, they're not going to go as far as here.
And the other point is obviously anyone from Eurozone and from places like China and the UK is cheaper, 10% cheaper for them to buy at the moment than it was before. So that's gonna drive the market prices up as well. So
sure.
So even if you invest, as an American investor, you'll take benefit of that indirectly.
Yeah.
of the market appreciating.
And I have to share with you, this is my first trip to Dubai, and there are a lot of Chinese, Indians, and other investors. If you think America's a melting pot, you've got to come to Dubai. I mean, it's incredible. And you've been here quite a while.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, I mean, there's a new whole area in Quwain where they're building a downtown on the beach. It's just recently got released, and it meant to be sort of Miami vibe, type of downtown. And it's going to be in a free zone, which is very attractive to Chinese investors. So we could very much be looking at a Miami vibe type of downtown with full of Chinese companies, and it's
is this in Dubai itself?
no, it's a brand new emirate. So if you're going down to Rak,
Yeah.
it's in between Dubai and Rak. It's called Kuwain.
Uh-huh.
So it's a brand new development, and they just announced it recently. And it's alongside the whole coast, 7 kilometers. You'll have towers and towers building, and there's a financial district. There's one island. There's just a financial district where you will have just companies, and especially because of the trade war, a lot of Chinese are looking for an alternative where to set up companies, how to move the goods. And Dubai is turning out to be one of the places where it could be the main hub for the trade.
Interesting.
I wanted to ask you what Americans typically think of Dubai, because this when I came here 10 years ago, this was mainly British city, and there weren't a lot of Americans, a lot of Europeans, some Russians at the time. But the perception that people from Europe and from the US had that is that the country is very restrictive, very backwards. And you've been here a couple of days, and I'm sure that you have the complete opposite feeling of what it actually is. So I think the social media, changed it over the years. I think that you've got a lot more people from Europe here that actually realize that it's not, not this way. So I was just wondering, what's it like with people from the US? What do they think about Dubai and the UAE?
Well, I can address that question, but people who don't have an opinion about Dubai, I have to tell you guys, this is nothing that you'd ever even imagine. I mean, and I might have mentioned this to you. It feels like this is a combination of Manhattan and Miami Beach on steroids and multiply it by 10. I mean, it's the money here, the wealth, the bling. It makes New York and Miami look like godforsaken little villages, and it really does. It's incredible, and it shows. And I'm sure just in the 10 years you've been here, and if you go back 20 or 30 years, or 50 years when the Emirates were founded, I mean, I guess the changes have been incredible. I mean, the number of high-end skyscrapers developments per square mile here probably has to exceed anything anywhere else. I mean, literally, the level of service. And I should say too, I'm sure there are a lot of stereotypes that Americans have about the Emirates just because of the political, how would I say, the political politicization, maybe with, the challenges with the U.S., whether it's, 9/11, people from Saudi Arabia, which is just right across the border here. And I think Americans don't distinguish between countries in the Middle East. I mean, they think the Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, it's all one and the same. It's kind of like maybe US and Canada. They're very similar. But, and I'm sure as you can attest, I mean, it's worlds apart. I've never been to Saudi Arabia. Have you?
No, I haven't had the
Okay.
pleasure yet, but I'm planning to go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but I mean, it's like night and day. Although I think the Saudis are opening up. They're trying to, get in more foreign investment, make it a little bit more liberal. But no, I mean, my experience here in Dubai and the Emirates, I was in Abu Dhabi over the weekend. It's incredible. I mean, very westernized, no problem speaking English, melting pot of the world. You don't stick out here. So whether you're American or Malaysian or Chinese or whatnot, I mean, believe me, nobody's going to even take a second look at you. I mean, you just blend in. Everybody's here just to, do business, make some money. And, I guess there's nothing wrong with that.
It's interesting you say that, because so I come from real estate development background from the UK, and I moved in Dubai around 10 years ago, just before the Brexit. And first 5 of my working life, first 5 years of my working life here was focusing on helping Dubai-based investors to invest in the UK and the US across real estate,
Really?
across pre-IPOs, mergers and acquisitions, and sort of private equity investments, etc. And just after the COVID, things change. So the perception of the real estate in Dubai that was here before, when I first came here, was that it's an extremely risky investment. So
Mhm.
if you were, the real estate brokers were almost looked at as scammers because there were so many people that lost money
Yeah.
back in the crisis of 2007, 2008, and the real estate developers just ran away with the money. What's happened since is that they set up these escrows for the off-plan investments, which made it extremely safe as an investment. So you had very, very little default from the real estate developer side since then, and in between of that, you had the influx of Russians in Dubai. You had the monetary policies across the world that flooded the markets with the cash.
Mhm.
And there was also a lot of people that moved here from Europe and the US and Russia just for the lifestyle on its own. So back in 2019, there was an undersupply within the market. And after all this happened, it just absolutely boomed. And I've seen Dubai for the past 10 years, how much it changed.
Yeah.
And it was an absolutely incredible change.
Yep.
And they want to double up the population by 2040. So at the moment, we run
Double the population
double the population
for all the Emirates or just Dubai?
for Dubai. So
Really?
at the moment, we're on 3.8 something million. We should be on 4 million in 2020.
I'm not sure the roads can handle that.
Well, that's a complete another conversation, to have.
Yeah.
But I think Dubai is going to be very segmented into different areas, So, for example, if you work in a certain area, you'll probably be living in that area as well, because it will be, when this happens, it'll be extremely difficult. So Dubai will grow itself out. So there won't be as much need as to be every single day in Marina or downtown. We will have, other busy parts that
Different
are
hubs,
already
built in,
growing
yeah.
so much. If you look at Dubai Creek, where it was and where it's now, is a city on its own,
Mhm.
So I've around the time when all this happened, we had a lot of inquiries from the investors that wanted to invest in Dubai, and that's why we set up Inovo Real Estate here. And the reason for that was the incredible growth that the country had. When I look at it, what it was 10 years ago and what it's now, and where it's going to be in 10 years, is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, to answer your question, what do Americans think? I think, my personal opinion, I could be wrong. You obviously have mentioned it. You've seen this heightened interest from Americans over the last couple of years, and I am sure that trend's going to continue. The domestic issues going on in the U.S., going on there right now, are only going to heighten or that trend. I think, and I think to make an analogy, I would say like look at Portugal. I made my first visit to Portugal, I think right during COVID or 2020, right around that time. And right around that time, Portugal was coming on the radar in the US. And it's become increasingly popular now. But from a financial perspective, and especially if you're looking at real estate investments there, I mean, I would say it's difficult to make money there, but the margins aren't that great. The developers, there's a lot of regulation. There was a project I was looking at and investing, and it was just on hold for like 2-3 years. And then I just got a letter from the developer recently that said, "Sorry, we had to redo the plans based on some engineering and local requirements. Your unit doesn't exist anymore." So
Wow.
here I made a down payment on something. I was, and literally they said, "Sorry, under the current plans, your unit is gone. We have these other two you might want, but it's not similar to what I was hoping to get." So I think, Portugal as a lifestyle, sure, for people that like that or they want access to the EU, it offers a great entry for life in the EU, maybe for retirement, stuff like that. But with Dubai, if you're looking, especially from the financial perspective, and also the lifestyle too, but from a financial perspective, the opportunities here are much greater. So I would say the Emirates and Dubai for American investors is maybe where things were for Americans in Portugal maybe 6-7 years ago. That this was a market that people were gradually learning about, people were getting more familiar with. And now I think especially like Californian investors, Texas, New York, they're very familiar with, Portugal and that market. Not everybody's considering it, but it's something they're looking at. And I think we're going to see that very similar with Dubai for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, if you look at Dubai from the investment perspective, for the past 3 years, it's done 60%, which is 20% year on year on average, and which is an exceptional growth. I don't think we're going to see this growth for the next few years, but I think it's going to be between 5 to 8% based on a lot of projections with big companies and consultancy firms here in Dubai. So the potential for growth is still is still very large. And going back to what you said, that you lost your deposit, that's common everywhere around Europe. So like I said, when being from real estate development background, you can build a 50 million pounds GDV project with as much as £500,000 per investment. The way you do it is you get an option on the land. So you put a portion of the 500k towards the option, which is basically a contract that says, and that you give to the owner and say, I will buy your property in a year for this price. And then in between you get the planning permission. Once you get the planning permission, if you do get it, you go to a bank, you get a bridging loan. With that bridging loan, it costs you around 8 to 12%. You buy then the land. Once you got the land, you can then go to the investors, like yourself, for example. So what happened that the Portuguese company went to investors like yourself, you put probably 25%, which is standard. And they would then take that 25% and then go to the other bank to borrow, to build, to get the senior debt, which costs them approximately 6 or 8%, depending on the current rates.
Right.
But if anything happens, if they cannot for any reason to pay that bank, if there are problems, the banks step in. They've got the first charge over the asset. They take everything, and that's everywhere around the Europe. So the benefit you get in Dubai is that your investment is safe. The investment goes into an escrow account, and the developer can only take it out after they reach a certain stages of that project.
And the banks don't have a charge on that money at all if it's still in the escrow.
It's in the escrow, right? So they can only release it after the developer proven that they added the value to that project. And that's, as far as I'm aware, that's only happening in Dubai. So it's got advantages, it's got its disadvantages. From the advantage perspective, is obvious, is the safety and security, but the disadvantage is that because they cannot borrow so much money from the bank, the upfront payment is larger, so it's approximately 50-50. So you pay 50% through the construction, and then 50% on handover.
So Anton, maybe now it's my turn to maybe drill you on some of the questions. Here's a question, and you mentioned that, and every time I talk to you, you're a wealth of information. You talk about some new Emirates, even that you mentioned just earlier, and even other investments. Tell us a bit maybe about yourself, and then maybe we'll get into what opportunities you see in Dubai or even some of the other Emirates, and what opportunities. Maybe let's start about yourself. Tell us a little bit about how you've been here for about 10 years now, and you've talked about a lot of the changes you've seen. Do you think Dubai is going to be the leading market within the Emirates? I mean, after all, there are, I think, about 7 Emirates here. Or do you see other opportunities in some of the other ones?
I would say that each and every Emirate is different. So you've been to Abu Dhabi over the weekend. You've seen how different it is. It's a lot more quieter, kind of a laid-back style. Also, Abu Dhabi is the richest Emirate, which has the oil. Dubai doesn't have any oil.
Really?
Or maybe had, but it's already gone, and it wasn't.
And they don't share, I guess.
Well, it wasn't as much as Abu Dhabi did, but they invested the money that they had extremely well, and they've got a I would say, the best government in the world.
Where? Dubai? Or?
In Dubai.
Really?
The way that they care about people, the way that they built their vision, I would say is one of the best governments in the world. And I've seen it. I've seen it in my own eyes for the past 10 years, how much they accomplished, how safe it is to live in the country, where the country is growing. It's and what's very important that people don't realize that is the mentality of the people, and that this is something that America had, and this is the reason why I think America grown so much, is the positive can-do attitude.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen that anywhere else apart from the US, and I think in the US it's maybe dying a little bit now. I don't know what's your experience in that, but
I think people are kind of skeptical and depressed.
here,
Now, when you say here, do you mean
in
does it?
Dubai,
So you think it differs from Dubai as opposed to Abu Dhabi or other Emirates?
exactly, it's different. It's all different. So, for example, Ras Al Khaimah is an emirate that's about an hour away from Dubai. At the moment, it has around 6 hotels there. It doesn't really have that much going on for them at the moment, but what they're doing, they're building a first casino in the whole Middle East.
Right.
That's a huge event. There hasn't been a casino in the Middle East, so they're building specifically an island for it. So it's a combination of 3 residential islands and 1 island just for the casino. So that's going to bring a huge amount of people,
Yeah.
to the emirate. So each of the emirate got something going on. So as I've mentioned, Al Quwain, they're building a downtown on the beach strip, which is also close to the casino. So that's one of the few downtowns facing the beach in the world. And obviously that's going to be extremely popular. And with the certain jurisdictions that they're setting up there, it will attract a lot of foreign investors.
And are you equally involved in some of these other Emirates, even though you're based in Dubai, or still the focus?
So we are fully regulated here in the UAE, so we can access any investment within the UAE. So I'm fully focusing on both Iraq, Al Quwain, Dubai, not as much as Abu Dhabi. We don't have, I think, Abu Dhabi is great for an end user, but from the investment perspective, there isn't as much demand in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
From my own experience.
Yeah, interesting. My experience with Abu Dhabi, more green space, more laid back, less expensive, and I guess you hit the nail on the head that it's from an end user perspective.
Exactly.
Maybe it's more interesting. So politically, that's interesting. And would you say, politically speaking, that there is a difference between the different Emirates? And Dubai is more, you certainly had a lot of praise for it. So is it more bureaucratic in some of the other Emirates, or some are not as pro-development or supportive of foreign investment?
It's a different approach, I would say. So overall, all of the Emirates want to grow and want to take in an investment. It's just a different sort of approach. So in Dubai, you've got golden visa, you've got the tourism. In Iraq, you've got the casino, which is the main thing that's driving the investment. There've been some rumors that they might be doing a Disney World in there as well.
Oh, really?
I mean, that's just rumors, nothing confirmed.
Yeah.
But that's effectively where the growth in the investment is. Al Quwain, again, the downtown that's facing the beachfront, and Abu Dhabi, as you said, has got the more laid back lifestyle with a lot of greenery. So each of the Emirates got something else going on. The reason why Dubai has appreciated the most, for the past few years, it was the amount of tourism and amount of companies and people that moved here. So in Iraq, it's going to be a holiday spot also for people from Dubai. So on the weekend, you can go and stay there. You don't have to go gamble in casino. Most of the properties will be beachfront facing. So you can just go there with your family, stay there, have a nice weekend on the beach, which would be much less than what you pay here in Dubai. And it will attract a lot of tourists, but from would you set up a company in Iraq? Probably not. Probably you look to set up a company here in Dubai, unless you want to set it up in Iraq in a free zone that is beneficial to yourself.
Right.
If you want to live here, work here, and actually use that company to work, it's probably more beneficial for you to set it up in Dubai.
Yeah.
And the lifestyle that you get here is very different.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
It's Dubai is what you make of it. You can have a party lifestyle.
Yeah.
You can have a very healthy lifestyle. You can have a very family orientated lifestyle. It is whatever you make of it.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned the golden visas. Are the golden visas regulated by each emirate? So each emirate has its own, or no, this is a nationwide program?
So the benefits that you get are the same.
Mhm.
However, each of the emirates got a different application process
Mhm.
for the golden visa.
Okay.
Other than that, it's all the same.
Gotcha. So, during your time here, and you briefly touched upon when you first came here and how much it's changed, but if you look at, like, the investor profile, what are the top 3 investors you see, coming in over the last couple of years in terms of nationalities?
So back in sort of 2022, it was mainly the Russian investors after the war broke out, and they absolutely flooded the market then. And but I think that has quieted down now over the past couple of years. And what we see now is a huge influx of Europeans. The tax implications that you've got in Europe, the safety,
Yeah.
which is a major concern, because for many people, it was always an option to move to Dubai to have a tax-free
Right.
jurisdiction where they don't have to pay tax. But I feel like it's no longer an option. If you're an entrepreneur and if you're bringing in a certain income, that you're being taxed so much for it, and that your government can provide you and your family with the safety and good level of education, you are forced to move to Dubai. So for the past couple of years, we've seen Europeans, a lot of people from the UK. I think when I talk about safety and the tax implication, they would know what I'm talking about. And we had a huge interest, especially on the institutional level, from the US. And one of the reasons is, I think, as you said, for the US investor, it was never really about the taxes, right? It was just sort of diversifying their assets. And it was mostly, I think, the Western markets that would typically be apart, if you're a private equity firm and you're looking at emerging markets, that would be your typical sort of investment. So now with the dollar being pegged to the local currency, anywhere else they buy is 10% more expensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And you enter in a market which is still growing and has a lot of potential. So not only you can diversify your assets, you don't have to take a hit on the currency. And that's one of the reasons.
But now you mentioned something here. Here, I'll play devil's advocate. You mentioned a dynamically growing market, and if I, just seen what's been built here already in Dubai, and it's still going strong. Do you think there's any problems about oversupply? I mean,
very good question. Very good question. And so if I put it from a numbers perspective, so you've got 120,000 properties that are confirmed to be built between 2025 and 2029. Now, the experts are expecting overall 300,000 properties. So we're talking about the properties that haven't launched yet. Okay. So there will be 300,000 properties that are coming up on the market. Now, as per the Khaleej Time, which is the major newspaper of the UAE, they're expecting to grow their population from now till 2029 by 700,000 people.
Right.
So the demand and supply will meet around the year of 2029 if these numbers are correct and
Right.
these numbers follow. So the way I personally, I think there can always be a risk
Right.
of oversupplied or not enough demand. Is an investment that has certain risk, and same as if you invest in a stock market. If you put your money into
Yeah, no
S&P
guarantees.
500, it won't grow 10% year on year. So there's always that risk. But from my own experience, the amount of people I'm talking to every day and the amount of people that come in here in Dubai, there isn't enough properties at the moment. that will satisfy that demand.
Where are these people coming from? I'm curious. Are these like expats relocating to the Emirates, living here, setting up their business, or mixture?
Well, I think the demographic of people have changed. So when I first moved here, it was mainly professionals that would move here with their family to get a great job, get a good their kids get their education paid.
A lot of international schools here I've seen.
A lot,
Yeah,
a lot,
yeah.
and they get their housing paid off, great packages, but over the years that deteriorated. So for these people, it isn't as attractive to come. But around the same time, with the changes of the tax situation and the safety situation, so many entrepreneurs have moved here now. So what I'm seeing is mostly young people as well, people that are hungry, hardworking, but it's also entrepreneurs that are forced to move here because of the safety and tax situation. And most of these entrepreneurs also bring capital with them, and they're looking at different ways to invest within the Emirate as well.
Right. What markets are hottest right now in the market, Anton? What do you say?
What do you mean by
Well, what's most popular? What's selling best, moving fastest, I guess?
studios? The entries, yeah.
Really?
The entry for the studios is moving the fastest.
Interesting.
I would say so, and also townhouses. If you get the right townhouse, that's selling.
Yes, I've heard about that. Yes, with all the more families coming in, people want larger spaces.
Well, there's an undersupply.
Yeah.
In townhouses. So from these 300,000 the properties that are about to come on the market, only 20% of them are villas and townhouses. So there's a huge demand for people that want a garden, that want a barbecue. So there are some developments that I don't particularly like the developer, for example, but they've got a product that have a high demand. So I simply, to answer this, I'd say studios and townhouses.
So is stuff that's more, I mean, I guess beachfront, there's really no beachfront property per se in Dubai or something. I mean, or is it stuff that's more in family-oriented developments, or it's kind of a mix in terms of...
I mean, there is a beachfront, which is in Dubai Maritime City and Dubai Islands.
Yeah.
But the entry there is different if you compare that to, for example, JVC, where that's where the most popular studios are being sold. JVC and Sport City, you're looking at the entry around $200,000, and I first lived actually in that area when I first moved here, and the area developed so much over the years. You've got great malls, parks, gyms, and it's mostly for first time investors. That's a sort of area that would go to, just to dip in their toes.
Yeah.
And from the townhouses perspective, it's more further in Dubai. So you've got around there's few areas around 30, 35, 40 minutes from Dubai where they're building these townhouses.
Gotcha. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about the golden visas. I'm kind of curious, and that kind of intersects with our work as immigration attorneys. What is it that well, first question is maybe what percentage of your foreign buyers are also interested in the golden visa, and what makes it compelling? Or maybe I should ask, what advantages are it if you're a resident, you have a golden visa, as opposed to just a financial investor without it?
I mean, look, it's two main things. First, bank account. You can open a bank account with that here.
So you can't really if you don't have a golden visa residency.
Unless you're a resident, you cannot open a bank account in Dubai.
Right.
Which is beneficial to most people, especially if you want to diversify. It's becoming extremely difficult to move assets in Europe. Some of the questions the banks ask are absolutely ridiculous.
Here's one issue that, what about leverage, like financing? If people are looking at investments, real estate investments here, how available are mortgages? Do you need to be a resident to access mortgages or financing here?
Very good question. No, you actually don't. So you can qualify for a mortgage as an overseas investor. It's around 60% that you can get loan to value.
Right.
And you'll get that on the handover. So like I said, the property is typically 50-50, 50% during construction, 50% on the handover. So you can utilize that 60%, sometimes even release an equity especially when the property goes up in value. A lot of people then go and buy another property and use that for whatever need that they have.
Yeah.
So it's easier if you're a resident, but not if you're self-employed or if you run a business. Then it's actually harder than being an overseas investor. But it's very possible if you hit certain demands and criteria. But the best way is to do it if you have an employment within the UAE, you'll be able to get up to 80%
Wow.
value of the property.
Wow. Interesting. Do you have any idea what the interest rates are at, or?
It's around, I would say, again, it depends on your circumstances, but it's around sort of 4 to 5% at the moment.
Oh, that's very, very advantageous.
Around that.
Yeah, very decent. Yeah, yeah. Do you deal solely with, or with your buyers? Do you deal solely with off-plan, or do you deal with existing properties too? Or how do you evaluate or advise clients whether it's worth buying something on the secondary market? Opposed to off-plan?
So it all depends on the circumstances. So typically, if you have an overseas client, it's advantageous for them to buy an off-plan property for two reasons. One of them, the payment plan, the flexibility. They don't have to pay everything up front. And the other advantage is the prices of the property is typically better than what you can get for secondary. So if you're an overseas client and want to move into Dubai immediately and you need something, then we can provide you with the best option within your criteria.
Right.
And obviously, if you live in Dubai, then and you want to live in something, you're an end user, then it all depends on what is it that you're looking for. But we can provide both. But for most of our clients are overseas, and most of them go for the off-plan property.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, with the remaining time, maybe we can talk a little bit about lifestyle and living in the UAE for those clients who might be considering possibly relocating here in addition to making investments. And as we know, you've been here for quite a while. I want to ask a couple questions maybe about kind of taxation, day-to-day living and whatnot. Before we get into those, one question related to real estate property taxes. What are those at roughly? Because in the US, we're known for having high property taxes relative to Europe. What is it like here?
So you pay 4% DLD tax, which is
4%?
Dubai Land Department.
Okay, but that's a one-time tax.
That's a one-time tax.
And that's it? There's no annual real estate tax?
That's it.
Incredible. Incredible. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Because in the US, especially in certain states, Florida, New York, California, they have very high real estate taxes, and you pay that annually.
It's, I had some of my clients that moved to the, back to US and back to Europe, and when they told me they saw their tax bill, they wanted to throw up. So, for past 10 years, I've kind of tend to forget about,
what it is to pay tax.
What is this to pay tax? So I feel for you.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you should. You should. So you've been here. What's day-to-day life, Anton? Like, I don't think you speak Arabic. Is that a problem at all?
No, I'm ashamed, but I'm not. I don't speak Arabic.
Even basic kind of Arabic?
No, I mean, I've got the 5 main words, but it's such an easy environment to speak English. Everyone speaks English.
Yeah.
All of the Arab nationalities speak English as well.
Even dealing with local authorities, kind of utilities, license for your automobile.
All English. It's advantageous to speak Arabic, in certain occasions, but all English. But I'll tell you what is advantageous is if you speak Russian, which I heard that
Funny.
you are fluent, which is quite unusual for an American citizen.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Interesting. Yeah, even the short time that I've been here, it's incredible how easy it is to get by with English. So nobody should be intimidated thinking, gosh, I don't speak Arabic. I mean, I felt that same way about Portugal. English is very widely spoken, but I'd have to say even here, it's even more widely spoken. I mean, anywhere you go, restaurants, bank ATMs, everything's in, 2 languages. And
there's a certain dialect that you have to use especially when you're speaking to drive.
It's very heavily accented English, maybe.
So there's a certain dialect that you have to learn, but it's not that hard.
Yeah. Dubai English. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Anton, if you don't mind me asking, what do you see the top 2 or 3 projects right now in the market that you feel strongly about?
So anywhere near to the casino, I think that's a huge opportunity. So if you look at how much the investment increased in places like Las Vegas or Macau in Malaysia, in Vegas within the first sort of 3 years, the investment growth was 20 to 30%. In Macau was 40 to 60% within the next 3 years that the casino was built. We're talking about 2005, 2006. So a lot of people say, "Oh, we missed the boat." Well, you haven't. You're very early in the project. So anywhere near to the casino that's from a good developer and that has a good payment plan, and
when's the casino to be launched?
end of 2027.
Okay, so there is time.
I say Umarku Wayne is a great investment as well. Like I said, for the reasons I've mentioned before, or any areas for townhouses. But it's very important to, and what a lot of people don't understand is how the market moves at the moment. So you had a 60% growth for the past 3 years, and the projected growth is 5 to 8%. But what's very important now is to get into the right project at the right time. So you've got something that's got EOI, which is an express of interest, which is extremely important to complete if you're making an investment. So the way it works, you fill your information alongside your passport. The developer typically asks for a refundable fee around $15,000. You pay the fee and you get early access to units. Okay, so it's extremely important these days to pick the right unit in the right building.
Right.
And if you don't go through this process, and if something is available for too long, it's probably not a good investment. You have to invest into something that's only available for a certain period of time. And to do that, you have to complete this EOI process. And that sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times, for people missing this and not acting early, because you really got just the first week to complete that. It's first come first basis. And it's usually the experienced investors that understand this and they complete that process early and secure the best units. And that's extremely important now when you're buying in the UAE. Go through the EOI, secure it early. Don't be scared. It's got 100% refunded.
That's something we went through with me. Yeah.
And your unit within 2 or 3 months, same unit below one floor below, has been selling for 200,000 dirhams more.
Right.
So that is extreme. That's extremely important. But again, I cannot hold a gun to anyone's head and say you have to do this. You have to understand that as an investor. So if you don't want to go through it, and if you just want to buy something that's available, then think about it a month or 2, and then it's still available. It's too late. It's probably not a great investment.
Yeah. I think American investors aren't always used to moving that quickly sometimes, but that's the speed.
That's how it works. So that's right. No, I don't really know any market that has performed so well for the past 3 years as Dubai has, and it still has a lot of growth potential. But that growth has attracted so many investors that now, if you want to get into the market and buy something good, you have to act. You have to act fast. If you buy something 3-4 years ago and you wait, it is fine. You'd probably make, you probably double up your investment or make 50-60%, not even having to going through this process of picking the right unit. But now it's extremely important to pick the right unit.
Interesting. Well, in closing, maybe what words of wisdom would you have for investors, let's say with a budget of $200,000 to $300,000 and say $500,000 to $700,000? What would you have?
So
Suggestion.
Pick a project at the launch. Be fast with the EOI process. And then be fast when you're deciding whether you want the unit or not. But whether you invest in 200 to 300 or 700 to 900, I think 200 to 300 you're looking at studio or 1 bedrooms, studios next to the casino. 700 to 900 you can get some really nice branded residences, near to the casino on the beach. So again, you have to act early. You have to pick the right. Just because it's branded and because it's on the beach doesn't mean it's a good investment if you don't have the right unit.
Well, presumably you can help guide people in doing all that.
That's my job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks, Anton, for your time. Thanks for having me on the show as well.
Thank you so much for coming, Charles. I think it was very useful, to have you here to understand how, people from the US think about Dubai, think about investment, what's really going on there, because US is, such a huge country that everything that happens here affects in
Yeah.
the whole world. So really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing some of your insight.
Well, hopefully we've expanded the horizons for some of our listeners, and they'll in short time, come to you to check out some opportunities here.
And come to you for an immigration advice.
Possibly we can do. Yeah.